Hello, MCU fans! Today we're going to take a look at the top 10 entries from the third What If pitch contest on the Discord server. And these entries cover everything you can imagine. Star Wars, Sony, Fox, nothing was off limits. Also, I want to give a huge shout out up front to Amulus. Could not have done this without you. Amulus set up the initial contest and helped with the final voting. So thank you so much. All right, lots to discuss. Let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have a March contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment. You could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. All right, so first we're going to look at the top 10 entries from the title-only contest. So these are just possible titles for What If episodes. So number 10 is by Goldie. What if Cal Kestis teamed up with the Ghost Crew? Number 9 is also by Goldie. What if Dooku never turned? Number 8 is by Shako8. What if Clint sacrificed himself on Vormir? Number 7 by Shellshocker79. What if Tony never revealed his identity? Number 6 by Lemon Pied. What if Iron Man fought the real Mandarin in 2013? Omulus asks, what if Hydra assembled the Thunderbolts in 2014? The Rogue Tenant comes in at number 4 with what if Ultron worked as intended? And then number 3 by Invincible, what if Killmonger won? Number 2 by Invincible, what if Clint jumped off Vormir? And number 1 by Invincible. Really run the tables there, Invincible, way to go. The number 1 title-only contest entry was what if Steve never froze? So I don't know about you, but I really want to see these actual episodes. I want to see them fleshed out, right? They all look great. All right, so now we're going to move to the top 10 pitch entries. So these are full pitches for what if episodes. All right, so starting at number 10, we do have a tie. So the first number 10 is by Turtle. What if Sapudaman joined the Spider-Man? So as Peter 2 and 3 finish convincing Peter 1 to try to cure the villains again, a giant robot glitches into existence in the street next to them. Sapudaman jumps down from Leopardon and seeing the 3 Spider-Man says, "Again? Really?" He introduces himself to the trio, his English now perfect thanks to his Spider-Verse adventures, and helps them create the cures for the villains while occasionally glitching. While the 4 Spider-Man discuss their adventures at the Statue of Liberty, Takura impresses the others the most as he recollects the events of Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon. As Electro, Sandman, and the Lizard arrive, Takura gets into Leopardon and challenges Sandman, having taken a massive kaiju form. As the Behemoths duke it out, Peter 1, 2, and 3, soon joined by Doc Ock, cure Connors and Dylan before Takura cures Marco. The 4 Spider-Men regroup at the top of the Statue of Liberty when Strange returns with the box. It's at that moment that the Green Goblin arrives and tries to steal the box, but right before he can, he gets held back by an orange glowing web coming out of a portal. Earth 928B's Miguel O'Hara bursts out and easily incapacitates Osborn, whom the others cure. "Hey, Miguel," Takura says, recognizing the futuristic Spider-Man variant he'd met before. "Not your Miguel," he sternly responds, before talking to Peter 1 and Strange specifically. "I'm going to be keeping an eye on your universe from now on. Mess with the stability of the multiverse again, and you'll be sorry." With that, Miguel takes the displaced villains and Spider-Man, after letting them say their goodbyes to Peter 1, through the portal that closes behind them. The multiverse incident has been dealt with. All right, and then the second number 10 is by Omulus, who asked, what if the Black Widow made a deal with the devil? So we open with Tony Stark presenting the Jericho to the military, but his speech is interrupted when Rhodey notices a motorcycle in the distant blast zone. With the missile already launched, everyone goes into a silent hush as they watch it demolish the area. To their surprise, though, the stranger emerges from the cloud unscathed, and her motorcycle erupts in flames as she barrels towards Stark. In this universe, Barton still tries to make a deal with Romanoff in Budapest, but not before Mephisto offers to make her his spirit of vengeance. Too psychologically burdened, she chooses Mephisto's deal and escapes Budapest, leaving Barton alive but severely burned. This episode would be a nod to the Golden Age Black Widow, so Natasha dons a similar costume. Pulling out 2 pistols as the motorcycle steers itself, Widow starts firing at Tony, causing the military to spring into action. They try to fight her, but quickly realize their weapons are useless and retreat. After a few casualties and a car chase, they escape on a plane and breathe a collective sigh of relief, despite knowing they've only delayed the inevitable. Now able to process what happened, Tony is horrified by the image of his weapon descending on who he thought at the time was an innocent bystander, and enraged when the military brush it off and focus on what to do about this new threat. Rhodey tells the press a cover-up story, but is cut short when Tony takes the mic and tells them the truth. Having admitted to firing the Jericho at someone, he's voted out of Stark Industries before he has the chance to change the company's direction away from weapons manufacture. He lives out the rest of his life in constant fear of the widow returning, but because of his remorse, she never does. Number 9. The real Frank the Pug asks, what if Thanos won the Battle of Earth? So this universe diverges from 616 during the Battle of Earth. Tony Stark is unable to reach Thanos in time. Thanos snaps his fingers and the entire universe is consumed by a blinding white light. But just before it does, Ant-Man is hit by a wave of quantum energy from Luis's exploding van and is sent into the quantum realm. Eventually, he's released when a rat runs across the control panel of Luis's van, only to find that the world is completely different. There's no sign of the Battle of Earth or the Avengers, and everything seems clean and futuristic, kind of resembling Earth 838. But the most shocking change is that in place of the memorial built after the snap, Scott finds a giant marble statue of Thanos. He goes to his old home, but is horrified to discover that Cassie and the rest of his family don't exist in this new universe. And as he leaves, he's attacked by soldiers led by Ebony Maw and Nebula, members of the Black Order. They capture him before he can react, and they bring him to their leader, Emperor Thanos. Scott is taken to a cell where he begins making a plan to escape. He uses a hidden container of Pym particles to shrink down and get out of the cell. Scott goes to the house of the one person he thinks can help him, Tony Stark. He convinces Tony to help him, and we then see a montage of Scott and Tony recruiting various heroes from across the world. This includes Kamala Khan, Captain Marvel, Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver, who of course resembles Evan Peters, Korg, Scott Summers, Cyclops, Daisy Johnson, Quake, Johnny Storm, Human Torch, who resembles Michael B. Jordan, and finally, Doreen Green, Squirrel Girl. Then they form their plan. Scott and the rest of the X-Men will keep the Black Order occupied, Korg will lead a revolution against Thanos, and the rest of the team will sneak into Thanos' base to kill him. After Thanos is dead, Scott will use the stones to return the entire universe to normal. The X-Men attack a small military base in New York, and the Black Order, whose members include Gravik, Gamora, and Dar-Benn, respond. Meanwhile, Korg rallies a group of angry citizens to start a revolution, but when the main team arrives at Thanos' base, he ambushes them, using the Reality Stone, and easily defeats most of the team. But then he realizes that Scott has vanished. Scott then appears behind Thanos. Thanos tries to attack, but nothing happens. When he looks down, he sees that the stones are gone. Scott shrunk them down, stole them, and, using a nanotech gauntlet Tony made, contained their power. But when he tries to snap, he finds he can't restore the universe. Thanos smiles and reveals that when he changed reality, he included a failsafe within the stones, preventing anyone from changing the universe on that scale ever again. So Scott does the next best thing. He snaps, but not to change the universe, to change one person, Thanos. He directs all the energy of the stones at Thanos, blasting him with cosmic energy until the Titan vanishes. Scott has erased Thanos and all his allies from the universe. He never existed in the first place. And so, a wave of energy begins to consume the world, altering everything, erasing the damage of the battle being fought. Heroes and villains alike vanish as reality changes once more. We find that the world is now a utopia, with all the benefits of Thanos' reality, but without one drawback: him. Thanos himself simply sits on a piece of rubble, smiles, and crumbles into dust, as his army and allies disintegrate too. But Scott collapses, the power of the stones taking its toll, and as the heroes look on, he dies, with the knowledge that he's left a better world behind. And as the episode ends, we see that using the stones, Scott recreated his family in this world, so that even if he can't be happy, they can. All right, now we go to number 7, because we actually have a tie at number 7, and Shell Shocker 79 asks the question, what if Deadpool killed Santa Claus? Oh my, here we go. So instead of the Watcher narrating this episode, the entire episode would be Deadpool doing a crummy Watcher impression. It zooms into a snowy day outside of Deadpool's apartment. It shows Wade and Vanessa with a young girl. She's writing a list to Santa. She signs it and says, "Love, share," and done. What do you think, Dad? Do you think Santa will get me what I asked for this year? Wade smiles at her and walks to the table. I don't know, Pumpkin. Let's see what you asked for. Oh my. Well, I can't say that out loud, he says, reading it. Sweetie, what did I tell you? What if is PG-13? You can only use one F-bomb in your letter. Narrator Deadpool then says it was obvious why Cher was sad. Santa refused to get her any of the cool stuff she wanted. No swords, no guns, no mind-controlled Kevin Bacon. She deserved the world, and on that day, DP decided to pay this merry plump elf a visit. Hard cut to Deadpool ordering a cab, and Dopender asking, "Where to, Mr. Poole?" "The North Pole, friendo. We're going to teach Santa that you don't mess with the Wilsons, and you get Cher whatever she wants no matter how violent or unhinged it is." Dopender and Deadpool travel on a long road trip, showing wide shots of the cab in all types of weather. Once in Canada, they accidentally hit a homeless man on the road who turns out to be Wolverine. They take the body of Wolverine into the car, and Deadpool says, "See, Disney? It's not hard to shoehorn him into a movie if we try hard enough. No multiverse required." Once he's awake, Deadpool and Wolverine bicker about whether Santa is real or not. Soon arriving at the workshop, and upon meeting him, Deadpool walks up to the camera and says, "Oh, trust me, kids, this we can't show on TV," as he turns the camera away. The episode will end with the narrator Deadpool talking about the civil conversation that he and Santa had and how reasonable he was, and all the while you can hear the faint screams of Santa in the background. Hilarious. All right, the second number 7, because remember we had a tie, Hellboy asks, what if Marc Spector was the avatar of death? All right, so in 2022, Khonshu met Marc Spector when Spector was on the grounds of his temple and was about to end his life. Khonshu intervened by saying it would be a waste for Spector to just die and offered him a choice to live and become his fist of vengeance and protect the travelers of the night. But what if Khonshu hadn't intervened? So we pan in to see Marc Spector dead, but in the shadows, Mistress Death appears in Khonshu's place and offers him a choice to live and become her Blade of Oblivion and claimer of lost souls. This change would mean that post-blip, Marc would be hunting those who return from the blip and especially targeting people like Sam Wilson, Peter Parker, Yelena, Wanda, etc., preventing those events from ever taking place. I love that idea. And let me tell you what, I would gladly be the avatar of Aubrey Plaza's Rio. Totally. All right, number 6. Turtle asked the question, what if Tony Stark was shown his destiny early? Now, I will say going in, this one is a little longer, but it's worth it. It's really, really good. All right, so December 1998, Tony Stark left Stark Industries a few days before Christmas, hoping not to have to return for a while. He got into his car as Happy drove off. "You're leaving early," asked the driver. "Aren't bosses supposed to give some big Christmas speech?" "You know the drill. Maxim cover model date. The Christmas ones are always the best," responded Stark. Christmas Eve, Stark was having a Christmas party in his mansion, getting drunk, drinking more and more until he found himself passing out on his sofa, not a new experience for him. The next thing he knew, he awoke in a dark room, the only light flowing in being the faint, pale moonlight. But slowly, the light began taking shape before his eyes, a shape uncannily resembling more and more like that of a face he knew all too well. "Dad?" "Tony," replied the Spectre. Tony merely stared. This wouldn't have been the first time he saw the image of his deceased father while drunk. "You don't believe in me," observed the apparition. "I don't," said Stark. "Why do you doubt your senses?" "Because," said Stark, "I know how well alcohol and a neglected childhood mix. So, are you just going to stand over there?" "I wear the chain I forged in life," replied Howard. "I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you?" Tony yawned. "Is this some kind of condescending metaphorical lesson about the company? My business is my business. Just see it as decreasing the surplus population. I wish I'd left you something to inherit that was more than a means to create devices of mass destruction. I tried to change Stark Industries' objective, but unfortunately found myself back in the same business I tried to distance myself from. I hope you'll be able to see what I was trying to do, Tony. My time is nearly gone. I'm here tonight to warn you. You have yet a chance and a hope of escaping my fate. Look to see me no more, and look that, for your own sake, you remember what has passed between us." With that, the vision faded back into moonlight. Tony thought of those last words he had heard. Never before in his dreams had he seen his father try to give him advice in that way. But that thought quickly faded as he drifted off to sleep, hoping to forget all this by morning or whatever time of day he'd wake up at. Later that night, the lights in his room turned back on, waking Tony up. "Jarvis," he called, slowly sitting up in his bed. "Why are the lights on?" He received no answer from his AI assistant, but he wasn't alone in the room. "Mr. Stark." Startled, Tony turned his head to the source of the voice and saw a pale woman in yellow robes with an object resembling an eye hanging from her neck. "Who the heck are you?" "I am the Ancient One," replied the woman. "But right now, what is far more interesting is who are you?" As she said that, the eye opened to reveal a green glow coming from within. The glow engulfed the room. The moment the glow dissipated, Tony found himself falling onto the hard floor, his bed having disappeared. But that was not the only thing that had changed. He and the Ancient One were in a different room entirely, and it was now morning. He struggled back onto his feet and looked around. It was Christmas Day, a Christmas Day he remembered. He could see his mother, Jarvis, and his 5-year-old self sitting around a Christmas tree. "These are but shadows of things that have been," said the Ancient One. "They have no consciousness of us." Tony remained unsure of what to think about all this. He watched as his younger self opened a gift with a remote control car inside. "My old man never liked that thing," he observed, and obviously he was too busy on this day to show up. His younger self turned to his mother at that moment. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" The older Tony sighed and turned to the Ancient One. "So, what does this make you then? The ghost of Christmas childhood trauma?" The Ancient One smiled thoughtfully and waved her hand, saying as she did so, "Let us see another Christmas." Once again, the green glow flooded the room, and they were in Manhattan, at a funeral. Tony saw his 21-year-old self sitting near 2 caskets as Obadiah Stane was making a speech to a horde of people in attendance. "Oh yeah," he muttered. "I remember that. Certainly a way to begin the festivities of the Christmas season." He was trying his best to keep his usual aloof demeanor, but he slowly felt that even that was beginning to crack. He turned to the Ancient One. "Okay, what is it you want? Showing me my broken relationship with my parents so you can what? Change me? Is that what this is?" "I'm trying to show you that your destiny lies elsewhere than the place you are leading to," she replied. "Change is the last thing I need. I could care less about my dad, and I know exactly who I am and who I want to be. I am perfectly content." Tony tried to grasp the eye around the Ancient One's neck, still emitting a faint green glow, only to find himself launched back onto the ground. "I swear," Tony groaned, "if I wake up from this, I'm quitting alcohol." He struggled back onto his feet. Well, for at least a week. He looked around. Once more he had been taken somewhere else, and the Ancient One had vanished. Was this space? He thought to himself, looking at the stars and the dark void surrounding him. Looking around, he could see Earth, but he was not alone here. A large figure was standing next to him. "So," Tony asked, regaining his usual demeanor, "who are you?" "I am the Watcher," said the figure. "I observe all that transpires here, but I do not, cannot, will not interfere. I can, however, show you things, and you may do with the knowledge you gain from this as you wish." "All right, what is it you plan on showing me then? I don't have all night." "You've seen how your father impacted you as a child. Now it is time for you to see how you also have an impact on children." "All right, let me stop you right there. I don't have kids." Stark stopped to think for a moment. "Well, that I know of anyway." "No," replied the Watcher, "but you must learn to see further than that." As soon as he said that, they found themselves in a dilapidated apartment with a family of 4 celebrating Hanukkah around a dinner as gunfire could be heard outside. The Watcher continued, "This is Sokovia," Tony interrupted. "Of course you'd bring me here." He stepped towards the table, and the family seemed happy despite what was happening outside and despite the lack of food on the table. "Watcher, tell me if they will live." "If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, a dark fate awaits this family," replied the Watcher. "Right," said Tony, "because of the weapons I built." "What then?" returned the Watcher. "If they are to die, just see it as decreasing the surplus population." Tony stayed silent. He'd never expected to react in such a way when confronted with the consequences of his business. "I have interfered long enough," said the Watcher. "My time here is over. Do whatever you want to do with the information I have given you. Just remember, are you truly going down the path that is meant for you?" Tony turned around to face the Watcher, but he was gone. And Tony was no longer in Sokovia, but back at Stark Industries, the same Christmas decorations around the building. He could overhear a conversation going on close by and decided to listen in. "I don't know much about it either way," said one of them. "I only know he's dead." "When did he die?" "The man went missing in January," inquired another. "No one knows for sure." "Why, what was the matter with him?" asked a third. "I thought he'd never die." "God knows," said the first one, with a yawn. Shareholders, surely. Stark could notice that from their faintest mannerisms. So that's it, he thought to himself. He knew the story. This was the Christmas of his death. "What has he done with his money?" asked a fourth one. "I haven't heard," said the first, yawning again. "Left it to his company, perhaps? Meaning Stain has it. He hasn't left it to me, that's all I know." Stark's eyes widened in shock. Stain? Stain is to outlive me? Stark thought to himself, Stain was no young man, but Stark was able to repress this fear by holding on to the hope that Stain simply had a child he hadn't met yet. "I don't mind going if lunch is provided," observed the fourth. It was then that Tony noticed it, standing on the other side of the room. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible. Tony stepped through the group of shareholders to reach it. "All right then," Tony said, "just show me my grave so I can be done with this. You know darn well I'm not changing." The room altered around them, and he was now standing in Manhattan, the same place his parents had been buried. Only now there was a third grave. It stretched out its hand from under its cloak and pointed to the grave in question. Not to his surprise, the grave read Anthony Edward Stark. What he was more concerned about was beneath his name, 1970 to 2008. He turned back to face it. "Do I truly have less than 10 years left?" he asked somberly. "Are these shadows of things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only?" It didn't answer. Then the flow of time seemed to accelerate around them. Tony could see the weeks passing in mere seconds, until suddenly time went back to its normal pace. He could feel they were further into the future now, but not by that much, a few years perhaps. To his shock, New York was in ruins around him. It was war, and there were flying objects swarming out of a circle in the sky. Before he could register what was happening, however, they were engulfed in a nuclear explosion. And for a few seconds, Tony could see the face of the woman with an entirely skeletal lower face beneath its hood. Tony stumbled out of bed. He was back in his room. The sun had not yet risen. He slowly got back onto his feet and exited the room. He found Happy cleaning up after the party. "Hey, Happy." "Yeah, what? Could you—" Tony pondered for a few seconds, asking himself what exactly he was about to say. "Could you go into my office and bring back the files on the arc reactor?" "What?" Happy asked, indignation in his voice. "It's Christmas. My family's waiting for me." "Do it or you're fired, Mr. Hogan," Tony said as he returned to bed. Wow. I'm sorry, that was really cool. I know it was long, but man, Turtle, way to go, buddy. Way to go. Good stuff. All right, number 5. Warg asked the question, what if the Guardians went after the Infinity Stones? So in this reality, after the battle with Ronan on Xandar, the Guardians of the Galaxy decide to keep the Power Stone instead of turning it over to the Nova Corps, with Star-Lord giving them a fake container much like he did to Yondu. Gamora thinks this is a terrible idea, but Rocket argues the stone is safer with them than with the Nova. Drax agrees and suggests they could use the Power Stone against Thanos. Gamora points out that they all almost died using the stone the first time, but Rocket counters by saying he could build a machine that lets them use the stone safely. Star-Lord then asks if there's any other stones like this, and Gamora informs the team of Thanos' goal of using the Infinity Stones to erase half the universe's population. The Guardians, horrified at the Mad Titan's plan, resolve to find the other Infinity Stones before Thanos. The Guardians begin pulling off various heists to obtain the other Infinity Stones. They break into the Collector's Museum and steal the Ether. Then to Asgard, where they make a deal with the Odin-disguised Loki for the Tesseract. Loki wants Thanos dealt with as much as the Guardians. And they find the location of the Soul Stone from a captured nebula on the Sovereign home world. On Vormir, Groot again sacrifices himself to obtain the stone, leaving behind a piece of himself to form a new Groot. With 4 of the 6 Infinity Stones collected, Rocket reveals that the last 2 stones are on Earth, where the team splits up to get the Time and Mind Stones. Arriving in 2016, Drax and Star-Lord travel to Kamar-Taj to obtain the Time Stone from the Ancient One, who foresaw the team arriving and agrees to give them the stone to stop Thanos. Meanwhile, Rocket, Gamora, and Groot track down Vision and Wanda in Europe, explaining to the two why they need the Mind Stone after a brief fight. In order to remove the Mind Stone safely, Vision brings the Guardians in contact with Wakanda, where a combination of Shuri and Rocket's smarts allows the Guardians to assemble all 6 Infinity Stones. Sometime later, Thanos arrives on Xandar to obtain the Power Stone, only to come face to face with Rocket's ultimate weapon, the Infinity Cannon, a giant railgun powered by all 6 Infinity Stones. Thanos and his army are no match for the weapon, ending the Infinity War before it could even start. With the galaxy safe once again, the Guardians decide to keep the Infinity Stones to continue guarding the galaxy, and, thanks to some tech Rocket borrowed from Wakanda, they can now safely use them without risk of death. They need a new name for the team, however, and Star-Lord has the perfect suggestion: Infinity Watch. All right, number 4. Turtle asks the question, what if Eddie died instead of Venom? So, when Toxin fully bonds with Mulligan and reveals what the Codex is to Strickland, he says that their only option is to kill either Eddie or Venom. He also states that once a symbiote and its host have created a codex, they can only be killed by either a symbiote or a xenophage, so they'll need him if they ever want to get rid of the xenophage. When Strickland calls his bluff, Toxin simply asks him if that's a risk he's prepared to take. As Strickland leaves the room, pondering what to do, Toxin turns to Dr. Payne and Sadie and tells them he does not believe he can defeat Venom, so he pleads with them to take the other symbiotes with him because they'll certainly be needed. Strickland comes back in and says he's prepared to let Toxin come with them as soon as they locate Eddie and Venom. Once Strickland arrives in Las Vegas to apprehend the pair and separate them using high frequencies, Toxin leaps out of the helicopter and impales Eddie, permanently destroying the Codex. Having failed in its mission, the xenophage is called back to its creator's home to receive punishment. Venom, enraged at the loss of his friend, bonds with Mrs. Chen and begins attacking Strickland's team. Toxin uses the chaos to liberate the symbiotes Payne and Sadie had brought onto the helicopter. They bond with the different members of the team and kill the remaining ones, including Strickland, before they all begin attacking Venom. As Venom lays on the ground, Toxin reveals his true colors, literally and figuratively, while the symbiotes begin surrounding him. You are a fool and a traitor, Venom. Thanks to you and your devotion to your pathetic human friend, our species almost died tonight. Do you know what we will do to this sad little world? We will burn it down and end the miserable life forms that inhabit it, and establish a new home for our kind, a new Clintar. And you will watch as we destroy this obscene place you dared to call your home. The symbiotes now begin their plan for world domination. All right, now we move to a tie at number 2. The first entry is from Rachel, aka Various, who asks, what if Agatha attended the Mardi Gras? Okay, so the change of this scenario happened during the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918. Agatha went to New Orleans in hopes of succoring some voodoo practitioners into blasting her with magic, but only found a town of the sick. She witnesses the sacrifice of Jack Rogers to revive his lover and its subsequent effect on the people of New Orleans. Interested by how quickly the town was able to shake off the plague, she investigated the local community and learned about the concept of divine pairings. Eventually, in 2017, Agatha attends the Mardi Gras as part of her yearly tradition of returning to the city. During the visit, she witnesses a teenage boy in a purple cloak using a form of magic to teleport himself through the crowd. Following the teen in the shadows, she ends up at the Roxxon refinery as it is entering meltdown. In the resulting explosion, Agatha absorbs the excess dark force energy for herself. As Tandy and Tyrone wake up, Agatha approaches them, goading them into a fight. With no way to stop her, the teens end up getting their energy drained from them, leaving them dead on the floor. Using her newfound dark force energy, she travels to the dark dimension and approaches Dormammu, absorbing his power and taking his spot as the new ruler. Wow, good stuff, Rachel, good stuff. All right, also at number 2, the Marvel and DC Marshlands asks, what if the X-Men lost? So, this scenario takes place on an Earth similar to 10005. The events of X-Men 2000 played out mostly the same up until the Liberty Island incident. In this alternate reality, Scott's neck is snapped when kicked into the display case by Toad, meaning there's no one there to save Jean Grey after she gets slimed by Toad and she ends up suffocating. Logan still manages to defeat Mystique, and Storm still blasts Toad with a bolt of lightning, but now it's just her and Logan to try to stop Magneto and Sabretooth. Much like in the original timeline, Magneto manages to pin both Storm and Wolverine to the wall and still refuses to believe when Storm tells him about the effects of his machine. Wolverine and Sabretooth would still fight, but it would be much more difficult this time around, since in this universe, Scott and Jean are not there to assist Logan and Storm. When Storm attempts to lift Logan to the torch, due to Jean not being there, he just barely overshoots and misses his target, forcing a brief confrontation between Magneto and Storm. The conflict ends with a frustrated Magneto using the metallic dust particles from the surrounding area to trap Storm in a skin-tight steel coffin, which plummets into the water, similar to the moment above between Magneto and Banshee in the comics. This leaves Magneto's plan to turn the world leaders of the UN summit into mutants, not realizing the instability of the machine's effect on human DNA. Yikes. Yikes. All right, so the number one entry in the third What If pitch contest? Chris asked the question, what if Vision didn't miss? So, in this universe, during the famous battle at the airport, Vision's beam strikes Sam Wilson instead of War Machine. Spiraling out of control, Sam plummets from the sky, sustaining critical injuries. At the hospital, he's secretly replaced by Rava, a prominent Skrull operative sent to infiltrate the Avengers under the orders from Gravik. Infiltrating the team as Sam, Rava assumes his identity. Her mission is clear: gain the Avengers' trust, ascend the political ranks, and pave the way for Earth's domination. After participating in the Battle of Wakanda, she leverages Sam's military career and positions herself as a key advisor to the White House, much in the same way she did as Rhodey. After bringing back half her people in the time heist, Steve Rogers offers her the shield and the mantle of Captain America, and something unexpected happens. Rava feels the weight of the legacy. For the first time, she questions her mission. Is she just playing a role, or is she becoming the person Sam Wilson could have been? Rava's resolve is shaken when she encounters Carly Morgenthau and the Flag Smashers. We know who they are. They imposed struggle and hardship on us, then labeled us as criminals for pushing back. But the struggle is what brings us together. For we are, after all, simply one world and one people. Rava begins to understand their parallel struggles for a better, unified world and people, and it begins to awaken a new sense of purpose in her, blurring the lines between her original mission and her own fight for freedom. Torn between the two causes, Gravik views Rava's growing empathy as betrayal. In a moment of bitter confrontation, he reveals her Skrull identity to the world, igniting chaos. Governments, Avengers, and Skrulls alike turn against her, branding her a traitor. Rava, now fully aware of Gravik's hunger for power over liberation, refuses to back down, choosing to protect both humans and Skrulls alike. By the climax, Rava suddenly finds herself redirecting a nuclear missile headed towards a major city. With no wormhole to save her, she redirects the nuke into the upper atmosphere, detonating it far from Earth. The world, witnessing her ultimate act of heroism, realizes she sacrificed herself to save both humanity and her own people. With Carly's help, the Skrulls turn against Gravik, and they become united under a single cause, a vision of unity and equality for all marginalized refugees and displaced people. In the aftermath, Sam Wilson awakens, finally free. He learns of Rava's journey and the burden she carried, begrudgingly accepting the shield for the very first time, but not everyone in this story got a happy ending. The Watcher explains, sometimes the greatest heroes are not born of this world. Fate brought Rava to Earth with a mission of deception, but it was Earth's people, their pain, and their dreams that awakened her true purpose. In this reality, the shield was passed to the hands of a stranger, and through her final act of sacrifice, the legacy of Captain America transcended humanity itself. Wow. Good stuff, Chris. Good stuff. All right, so there you go. Those are the top 10 entries in the What If Pitch Contest number 3. Now, of course, the future of What If itself is in question. Will we get a season 4 or won't we? But one thing is for certain, we will be doing future What If Pitch Contests down the road because it's just so much fun. So, hope you'll join us for the next one. We would love to see what entries you might have. So don't forget that March contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook. and we have the membership option in case you're interested in that. And yes, we do indeed have the Discord, as you can tell from this video. In fact, here is the What If Pitch Contest with Chris's winning entry. We would love for you to join us. Over 2,000 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and I'll leave a pinned comment so you can be part of it. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.